The massive chamber floated in the darkness of space, circling a dying star that pulsed with strange blue light. Inside, 12 different alien species sat in their designated seats, each one representing thousands of worlds across the galaxy. The walls were made of crystal that seemed to glow from within, casting strange shadows across the faces of beings that had ruled the stars for millions of years. Ambassador Hyun stood in the center of the room, his simple black suit looking plain compared to the elaborate robes and armor worn by the alien delegates. He was a tall man with graying hair and tired eyes that had seen too many battles in his younger days. Next to him stood Mina, a fighter pilot with short black hair and quick movements that showed her military training. On his other side was Jiwoo, a scientist who kept adjusting his glasses nervously as he looked at the alien technology surrounding them. The three humans had been brought here to answer for their planet's crimes. What crimes, Hyun still did not fully understand. Apparently, Earth had been discovered 6 months ago by a scout ship from the Korthan Empire. The Korthans were a race of tall, thin beings with gray skin and too many fingers on each hand. They had reported back to the Galactic Council that Earth possessed valuable resources and a primitive species that needed guidance. Hyun had tried to explain that humanity did not need guidance. Earth had its own governments, its own laws, and its own way of doing things. The Council had not liked that answer. The head of the Council was a massive creature called Chancellor Vorn. He looked like a floating jellyfish made of metal, with tentacles that sparked with electricity. His voice boomed through the chamber without him needing a mouth to speak. "The human delegation has been given 3 months to consider our generous offer," Vorn said, his voice echoing off the crystal walls. "You were asked to join the Council as a client species. You would give us access to your planet's water, minerals, and biological resources. In return, we would provide protection and technology. Yet you have refused. Why?" Hyun took a deep breath. He had practiced this speech 100 times on the journey here. "Because Earth belongs to humanity. We did not ask to be found. We did not ask for your protection. We have survived on our own for millions of years, and we will continue to do so." A sound like grinding metal filled the chamber. It took Hyun a moment to realize it was laughter. The alien delegates were laughing at him. "Survived?" said another delegate, a creature that looked like a collection of floating rocks held together by some invisible force. "You have barely left your own solar system. You still fight wars among yourselves over imaginary lines on your planet's surface. You are children playing with fire." Mina stepped forward, her hand instinctively moving toward where her sidearm would normally be. Of course, they had not been allowed to bring weapons into the council chamber. "We may be young, but we are not weak. And we are not children who need parents to tell us what to do." More laughter. Vorn's tentacles crackled with brighter sparks. "Such spirit. Such foolishness. Do you know how many species have stood where you stand now? Hundreds. Thousands. All of them believed they were special. All of them learned the price of defiance." Jiwoo spoke up for the first time, his voice quieter than the others. "What happened to them? The species that refused?" Vorn's tentacles stopped moving for a moment. "They learned to accept our guidance, or they ceased to exist. The galaxy is a dangerous place, human. There are threats you cannot imagine. Pirates, rogue AI, dimensional tiers. The Council maintains order. The Council provides safety. All we ask in return is obedience and resources." "Slavery," Hyun said flatly. "You are asking us to become your slaves." "We prefer the term client species," Vorn replied. "But call it what you will. The choice is simple. Join us willingly, or we will take what we need by force. You have one more rotation of your planet to decide. This council will vote on whether to authorize military action against Earth." The three humans were escorted out of the chamber by guards that looked like walking suits of black armor. They were taken to a small waiting room with walls made of the same glowing crystal. Through the transparent floor, they could see the neutron star spinning below them, its surface covered in patterns of light that hurt to look at directly. "They are going to vote to invade," Mina said, pacing back and forth. "You saw their faces. They have already decided." "Then we need to warn Earth," Jiwoo said. "We need to get back and prepare." Hyun shook his head slowly. "We have been preparing. Ever since we saw the first alien ship appear in our solar system, every nation on Earth has been working together. Building weapons, training soldiers, studying their technology. We knew this day might come. But we have seen their fleet," Jiwoo protested. "Thousands of ships, weapons that can destroy a city from orbit, shields that can stop our missiles. How can we possibly fight that?" Hyun walked to the window and looked down at the spinning star. The same way humanity has always fought, with everything we have, with tactics they have never seen, with a refusal to surrender no matter the odds. In the council chamber, the vote was taking place. One by one, the alien delegates activated their voting crystals. Blue light for yes, red light for no. The decision to invade Earth and bring humanity into the council by force. Blue, blue, blue. The lights flickered on, one after another. Not a single red light appeared. The vote was unanimous. Vorn's voice echoed through the chamber. It is decided. Commander Velrax of the Korthan Empire will lead the invasion fleet. Earth will be brought into compliance within one standard cycle. Any resistance will be met with appropriate force. Commander Velrax stood from his seat and bowed to the council. He was taller than most Korthans, with elaborate markings on his gray skin that showed his military rank. It will be my honor to civilize this primitive world. I expect minimal resistance. Their weapons are crude, their tactics are simple, and their will to fight will break when they see our superior technology. In the corner of the chamber, almost forgotten by the other delegates, sat the Keeper. The Keeper was the oldest being in the galaxy. No one knew exactly how old. It looked like a small, wrinkled creature wrapped in dark robes with eyes that seemed to contain entire universes. The Keeper rarely spoke during council meetings. Its role was to observe and record, to remember the history of the galaxy so that mistakes would not be repeated. But now, as the Keeper watched the blue lights of the vote fade, it felt something it had not felt in millions of years. Worry. The Keeper had seen the reports from Earth. It had studied the humans carefully, and what it saw troubled it deeply. These humans were different from other species the Council had encountered. They evolved on a world of extreme danger, predators everywhere, natural disasters that could wipe out entire civilizations, disease, famine, war. Yet humanity had not just survived. They had thrived. They had turned every challenge into an opportunity to grow stronger. The Keeper looked at the confident faces of the council delegates and wanted to warn them. But the Keeper's role was to observe, not to interfere. So it remained silent and waited to see what would happen when the unstoppable force of the Galactic Council met the immovable object of human stubbornness. Back in the waiting room, Hyun received a message on his communication device. The vote was complete. Invasion authorized. They had 24 hours to leave council space and return to Earth. Mina slammed her fist against the crystal wall. 24 hours. That is all the warning we get before they come to destroy our home. Not destroy, Hyun corrected. They want our resources intact. They will try to break our will to fight, force us to surrender. They think we are like the other species they have conquered. Weak, divided, easy to frighten. We need to tell them they are wrong, Jiwoo said. Hyun smiled for the first time since entering council space. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had fought in wars before, who had seen the worst that combat could offer and who had survived it all. Oh, we will tell them, but not with words. Their ship was waiting at the docking port, a small human vessel that looked like a toy compared to the massive alien warships that filled the station. As they boarded, Hyun turned back one last time to look at the council chamber floating in the distance. They think they know what war is, he said quietly. They are about to learn the difference between war and what humans do when you threaten their home. The ship's engines flared to life, and they began the long journey back to Earth. Behind them, Commander Velrax was already assembling his invasion fleet. Thousands of ships all equipped with weapons that had never failed to bring rebellious species to their knees. But as the Keeper watched the fleet gather, it wondered if the Council had made a terrible mistake. Because in all the millions of years of galactic history, no species had ever evolved quite like humanity. No species had ever fought quite like humans fought, and no species had ever been quite so dangerous when they were backed into a corner with no way out. The invasion fleet would learn this lesson soon enough. And when they did, the galaxy would never be the same again. They have combined their artillery, their infantry. The news of the failed invasion spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. On every council world, beings gathered around their information displays to watch recordings of the battle. They saw mighty Korthan warships destroyed by a species that had barely reached its own moon a century ago. They saw disciplined alien troops scattered by human tactics that seemed chaotic but were devastatingly effective. In the crystal chamber where the council met, the 12 delegates sat in stunned silence. Chancellor Vorn's tentacles crackled with angry electricity as he reviewed the battle reports. 40 ships lost, over 1,000 soldiers dead or captured. Commander Velrax requesting reinforcements after promising a quick victory. How is this possible? Demanded one delegate. A being made of living crystal that refracted light into rainbow patterns. The humans have no shields, no plasma weapons. Their ships are held together with primitive alloys. Yet they defeated our finest military commander? Ambassador Hyun stood once again in the center of the chamber. This time he was not nervous. This time he stood with his shoulders back and his head high. Next to him, Mina still wore her flight suit, having come directly from the battle. Jiwoo carried a data pad filled with information he wanted to share. You asked how this is possible, Hyun said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. I will tell you. You have ruled the galaxy for so long that you forgot what real warfare looks like. You fight with superior technology and expect lesser species to simply surrender. You have never had to fight an enemy that refuses to quit. Refuses to quit? Vorn's voice boomed. Every species can be broken. Every species has a limit to its endurance. You will learn this when we send our full military might against your world. Mina stepped forward. You are welcome to try. But let me explain something you do not understand. Humans evolved on a death world. Everything on Earth wanted to kill us. The weather, the animals, disease, other humans. We spent millions of years learning to survive against impossible odds. Fighting is in our blood. Jiwoo activated his data pad and projected images into the air. They showed human history. Ancient battles with swords and spears. Medieval sieges. Modern warfare with tanks and aircraft. Every generation of humans has fought wars. We have studied warfare for thousands of years. We have written books about tactics and strategy. We train our children with games that teach them how to outthink opponents. War is not something we do when we must. It is something we have become very, very good at. Another delegate spoke, this one resembling a floating collection of tentacles. You speak as if war is something to be proud of. Civilized species have moved beyond such primitive behavior. Have you? Hyun asked. Or have you simply become soft? You threaten species into submission without fighting. You rely on fear and superior technology. But what happens when you face a species that is not afraid? That will use whatever technology they have in ways you never imagined? The chamber fell silent. The delegates had no answer to that question because no species had ever challenged them like this before. Vorn finally spoke, his voice colder now. It does not matter. You won one battle through surprise and desperation. When we return with our full fleet, with proper tactics and preparation, you will fall like all the others. This council has resources you cannot imagine, and this council has never faced an enemy like humanity, Hyun replied. But this is not why I asked to speak with you today. I came to deliver a message. Earth does not want war. We want to be left alone. But if you insist on continuing this invasion, we will not just defend our world. We will bring the fight to you. Laughter erupted from several delegates. The idea of humans attacking council space seemed absurd. But Hyun did not smile. Neither did Mina or Jiwoo. They stood quietly, letting the laughter die down. You think we are joking, Hyun said. You think we are bluffing. Let me show you something. Jiwoo activated another file on his data pad. It showed recordings from Korthan helmets captured during the battle. In the recordings, human soldiers were freeing aliens from cargo containers on the Korthan ships. These were not Korthans. They were smaller beings with fur and large eyes, clearly terrified. These are Threshy, Jiwoo explained, a species that the Korthans conquered 20 years ago. They were being transported to mining colonies where they would work until they died. We freed 300 of them during the battle. We gave them medical care, food, and safety. Then we asked them about life under council rule. The images changed to show interviews with the freed Threshy. They spoke through translators, telling stories of forced labor, families separated, resources stolen from their world. They talked about how the council took everything and gave nothing back, how they were not allowed to have their own governments or make their own choices. We found something interesting, Hyun continued. The Threshy are not the only species suffering under council rule. There are dozens of client species, all of them forced to serve their council masters, all of them dreaming of freedom but too afraid to rebel. Well, we are not afraid, and we are going to give them something they have not had in generations: hope. Vorn's tentacles snapped with electrical discharges. You dare to interfere with council business? You dare to encourage rebellion among our client species? Yes, Hyun said simply. Because what you call business, we call slavery. And humanity has a long history of fighting against slavery, even when the cost is high. On Earth, Commander Day was already putting this plan into action. In a secure bunker, he met with Lieutenant Taeyang and Marine Somin. Both were experienced soldiers who had volunteered for a dangerous mission. They sat across from Day, listening carefully as he explained what he needed them to do. We captured 3 Korthan transport ships during the battle, Day said. We have been studying them, learning how they work. Our engineers believe they can operate them well enough to fly them into council space. Taeyang was a tall man with steady hands and calm eyes. He had served in special operations for 10 years and had seen combat on 3 continents. You want us to fly alien ships into enemy territory? What is the mission objective? Liberation, Day said. Intelligence reports that the Korthans have a major mining colony on a planet called Threshy. There are over 10,000 Threshy workers there, guarded by maybe 500 Korthan soldiers. The Korthans think they are safe because no one has ever attacked a council facility before. They are about to learn they are wrong. Someone leaned forward. She was shorter than Taeyang but moved with the dangerous grace of a predator. Her specialty was close combat and tactical planning. 500 guards against how many of us? 100 soldiers, Day replied, plus weapons and equipment. The Korthans have better shields and energy weapons, but they have never fought against a coordinated human assault. More importantly, they have never had to defend against attackers who do not care about following the rules of galactic warfare. Taeyang smiled slightly. When do we leave? 2 days. That gives you time to train with the alien ships and brief your teams. This mission is voluntary. You can back out at any time. No one will judge you. Somin shook her head. We are going. Someone needs to show the galaxy that the Council is not invincible. While Taeyang and Somin prepared their mission, Jiwoo was working on something equally important. He had been studying the technology captured from the Korthan ships, learning how it worked. What he discovered was both fascinating and troubling. The Council had advanced technology, but they guarded it jealously. Client species were given just enough to survive, but never enough to threaten their masters. The Korthans had energy shields and plasma weapons, but they had not invented them. They had been given these technologies by the Council millions of years ago. Since then, they had made almost no improvements. They simply used what they were given and never questioned whether better methods might exist. Humanity approached technology differently. Every generation tried to improve on what came before. Every problem became a challenge to solve, not just accept. Jiwoo realized that if humans could get their hands on Council technology, they could probably improve it within years, maybe even months. He brought this information to a meeting with other scientists. In a laboratory filled with captured alien equipment, he explained his findings to researchers from a dozen countries. The Council is technologically stagnant, he said. They have been using the same designs for millions of years. But we can take their technology and make it better. Dr. Yuna, a physicist who specialized in energy systems, examined a captured plasma rifle. If we can understand how their energy containment works, we could build smaller, more efficient weapons. Maybe even improve on their shield technology. Exactly, Jiwoo said. But here is the important part. We should not keep this technology to ourselves. We should share it with every species that wants to be free from Council control. Imagine if the Threshy had weapons and shields of their own. Imagine if all the client species could defend themselves. Another scientist and engineer named Junho looked worried. The Council will see that as an act of war. They will send everything they have against us. They already are, Jiwoo replied. We are already at war. The only question is whether we fight it alone or with allies or vehicles into a Psi. Jiwoo has designed new weapons using their energy systems, and we have something the Grand Fleet assembled in the darkness between stars. The largest military force ever gathered in galactic history. 10,000 warships from every Council member species, all converging on a single target, Earth. Chancellor Vorn commanded from his flagship, determined to erase humanity and its dangerous ideas from existence. This would be the final lesson to any species that dared dream of freedom. On Earth, sensors detected the approaching armada 3 days before it would arrive. In the command center buried beneath the mountains, Commander Day studied the tactical displays with Colonel Bora and Ambassador Yun. The numbers were overwhelming. Even with the improvements they had made, even with their captured technology, humanity could not win a straight fight against 10,000 ships. "We have 2,000 ships," Bora said quietly. 1,000 of our own construction, 500 captured Korthan vessels, and 500 sent by the Threshy and other freed species. "Against 10,000. The odds are not good." "The odds have never been good," Day replied. "But we are not fighting this battle alone." He pressed a button on his console, opening a communication channel. "All Allied forces, this is Earth Command. Are you in position?" Across the solar system, hidden among asteroids and behind moons, ships responded. Not just human ships, but vessels from a dozen different species. The Threshy had sent every ship they could fly. 3 minor council species had secretly defected, bringing their fleets with them. Even some Korthan captains had chosen freedom over tyranny, joining the defense of Earth. More importantly, scattered throughout council space, rebellions were reaching their peak. The humans had spent the past month distributing weapons, sharing technology, and teaching tactics to every client species willing to fight. Now, as the Grand Fleet moved toward Earth, those species struck at their oppressors. Supply depots exploded. Communication networks went dark. Council worlds descended into chaos. The Keeper watched from a small observation ship at the edge of the battle zone. The ancient being had chosen not to participate but to witness what would happen. It had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations, but something about this moment felt different. Something fundamental was changing in the galaxy. The Grand Fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. Thorn broadcast his message to the planet below, his voice filled with righteous fury. "Humans of Earth, your rebellion ends today. Surrender now and accept Council rule, or we will reduce your world to ash. You have 1 hour to respond." The response came not from Earth, but from the human and allied fleet that emerged from hiding. 2,000 ships against 10,000. On paper, it was suicide. But Mina sat in her fighter's cockpit and smiled. She had learned something important over the past months. Numbers were not everything. The Council had more ships, but humanity had something more valuable. They had a reason to fight. The battle began differently than the first engagement. This time, the Council forces were prepared for human tactics. They had studied the recordings, adjusted their formations, trained their crews, but they had only studied one battle, and humanity had been studying warfare for thousands of years. Commander Day did not order a direct assault. Instead, the human fleet scattered, breaking into small groups that harassed the Grand Fleet from every angle. They did not try to destroy the big warships. They targeted supply vessels, communication ships, and troop transports. They made the Council fleet defend 1,000 different points at once. Meanwhile, Tai Yang led a strike force on a mission that would decide the battle's outcome. His ship, along with 50 others, punched through the Council lines and headed not for the enemy flagship, but for the support vessels in the rear. These ships carried fuel, ammunition, and food for the Grand Fleet. Without them, the massive armada could not sustain a long battle. The Council had expected humans to fight honorably, to meet them ship to ship in glorious combat. They did not expect humanity to treat war like the practical, brutal business it had always been on Earth. Taiyang's forces destroyed 6 supply ships before the Council realized what was happening. Then they destroyed 6 more. Vorn watched in growing frustration as his carefully planned assault fell apart. His ships outnumbered the enemy 5-1, but they could not land a decisive blow. The humans and their allies were too fast, too unpredictable. They fought like animals, he thought, without honor or dignity. He did not understand that humans fought to win, and nothing else mattered. On Earth's surface, the civilian population watched the battle unfold on their screens. In Seoul, in New York, in Lagos, in Mumbai, and Sao Paulo, people gathered in public squares to watch their defenders fight for survival. They saw ships explode in flashes of light. They saw the odds their pilots faced, and they refused to look away. In a hospital in Seoul, Dr. Yuna worked frantically to prepare for casualties. She knew the human fleet would take losses. Every war did, but she also knew that humanity had made the right choice. Better to fight and possibly die than to live forever as slaves. The battle raged for 6 hours. Ships from both sides fell in flames, spinning into the void or crashing onto planets and moons. The human losses were significant. 300 ships destroyed, thousands of lives lost. But the Council lost more. Not just ships, but something more important: their certainty. For millions of years, the Council had ruled through the assumption that they were superior, that their technology, their experience, their very nature made them the rightful masters of the galaxy. But now they faced an enemy that refused to accept this assumption. An enemy that looked at impossible odds and simply worked harder to overcome them. And that enemy was not alone. As the battle continued, more ships arrived, freed client species from across the galaxy, responding to humanity's call for help. They came in small numbers, 50 ships here, 100 there. But each arrival strengthened the defenders and weakened Council morale. On the Council flagship, Vorn's communications officer delivered devastating news. Chancellor, we are receiving reports from across Council space. Major rebellions on 47 worlds. The Korthan Empire has lost control of 6 colonies. 3 member species have formally withdrawn from the Council and are requesting to join the Human Alliance. Lies, Vorn shouted. The Council has stood for millions of years. It cannot fall because of one primitive species and their foolish ideas. But even as he spoke, he knew the truth. The Council was not falling because of humanity's weapons or ships. It was falling because humanity had reminded the galaxy of something that the powerful had tried to make everyone forget. That all intelligent beings deserved freedom and dignity. That might did not make right. That cooperation was stronger than domination. The Keeper's ship moved closer to the battle, observing carefully. The ancient being saw the pattern emerging. The Council forces were still stronger, still had more ships, but they were fighting without unity. Some captains fought fiercely, believing in the old order. Others held back, questioning whether they were on the right side. And some, seeing which way history was flowing, quietly withdrew from the battle entirely. The turning point came when Colonel Bora led a combined human and Threshy force directly at the Council flagship. It was a desperate move, one that would cost many lives, but Bora knew that if they could take out Vorn, the Council command structure would collapse. The ships drove forward through devastating fire. Explosions lit up space as vessels were destroyed one after another. But still they came, relentless as a river carving through stone. Bora's own ship took hits that breached the hull, venting atmosphere. But the life support held. The engines kept burning and she pushed forward. Vorn watched the approaching ships with something he had not felt in centuries. Fear. These humans would not stop. They would sacrifice everything to win. He had never faced an enemy like this. No one in the Council had. How did you defeat beings who valued freedom more than survival? Before Bora could reach the flagship, something unexpected happened. A Council ship moved between them and Vorn's vessel, but it did not fire on the humans. Instead, it opened communications. The captain was a Korthan commander named Ilreth. Human vessel, this is Commander Ilreth of the Eternal Dawn. I am surrendering my ship and crew. We will fight no more for a Council that rules through fear and oppression. If you will accept us, we wish to join your alliance. More ships followed. First 1, then 5, then 20 Council vessels broke formation and declared they would not fight for tyranny. Some were client species who had been forced to serve. Others were members of Council races who had finally seen the truth. The Grand Fleet was dissolving from within. Vorn made one final, desperate decision. He would not surrender. He would not admit defeat. Instead, he ordered his flagship to fire every weapon at Earth itself. If he could not rule the galaxy, he would at least destroy the species that had ruined everything. But he had forgotten about Mina and her fighter squadron. They had been waiting for exactly this moment, positioned between the flagship and Earth. As the massive weapons charged up, Mina led her pilots in a final desperate attack. They fired everything they had at the flagship's weapon systems, sacrificing their own safety to protect the world below. The explosion. The Korthan invasion fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system exactly 1 week after the Council vote. Commander Velrak stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion, watching the small blue planet appear on his viewing screen. It looked peaceful from this distance, defenseless. He had conquered 12 worlds in his career, and this would be the easiest. Send the surrender message, Velrax ordered. His communication officer, a young Korthan named Ron, activated the transmission array. The message was simple, and had worked on every other primitive species they had encountered. Submit now, or face total destruction. On Earth, in a military command center buried deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, Commander Day listened to the alien message with his arms crossed. He was a stocky man with silver hair cut military short, and a scar across his left cheek from a training accident years ago. Around him, Dozens of officers monitored screens showing the alien fleet's positions. "They are giving us one full rotation to surrender," translated one of the communication specialists. "After that, they will begin orbital bombardment of major population centers." "One day," Day said. He turned to his second in command, a woman named Colonel Bora who had more combat experience than anyone else in the room. "What do you think?" Bora smiled. She was younger than Day, with sharp eyes that never missed a detail. "I think they have no idea what they just flew into." Day nodded and pressed a button on his console. "All units, this is command. The enemy has arrived. Execute protocol defiance. Show them what humans do when someone threatens our home." In orbit around Earth, hidden among the debris and old satellites that humanity had left there over decades, weapon systems came to life. They had been placed there quietly over the past 6 months, ever since the first alien contact. Missile platforms, railguns, laser arrays, all disguised to look like space junk until the moment they were needed. The Corthan fleet moved closer, confident in their shields and superior technology. Velrax watched the planet below and saw no signs of military resistance. No ships rising to meet them. No weapons firing, just silence. "They have accepted their fate," Velrax said. "Prepare landing forces. We will occupy their capital cities and install our administrators. This will be over before the day ends." That was when Earth fired back. The first missile came from what looked like a dead weather satellite. It streaked toward the Corthan vanguard ships at impossible speed, too fast for their tracking systems to properly lock on. The warhead was nuclear, but modified with technology that humanity had kept secret. When it detonated against the lead ship's shields, it did not just explode. It released an electromagnetic pulse that fried every electronic system within a kilometer radius. The lead ship went dark and began drifting. Before the Corthans could react, 100 more missiles launched from hidden positions. Not all of them were nuclear. Some were kinetic penetrators, simple lumps of metal accelerated to incredible speeds. Some were cluster munitions that scattered smaller explosives across wide areas, and some were decoys designed to waste the enemy's defensive fire. "Evasive maneuvers," Velrax shouted. His ship shuddered as impacts struck their shields. Alarms blared across the bridge. "How are they doing this? Their technology is supposed to be primitive." On one of the Corthan cruisers, a railgun round punched through the shields and tore a hole in the hull. Atmosphere vented into space. On another ship, a missile slipped past the point defense systems and struck the engine core. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Ron looked at his commander with fear in his eyes. "Sir, we have lost 6 ships. 6 ships in the first 2 minutes of engagement. This is not supposed to happen." Velrax forced himself to stay calm. He had trained for decades to command in battle. "All ships, return fire. Target their orbital weapons platforms. Destroy everything in orbit around that planet." The Corthan fleet opened fire with their plasma cannons, beams of superheated energy that could melt through solid metal. They hit several of the hidden platforms, destroying them instantly. But for every platform they destroyed, 2 more revealed themselves and fired. It was like fighting an enemy that was everywhere and nowhere at once. High above Earth's atmosphere, Mina sat in the cockpit of her fighter craft. Around her, 300 other pilots waited for the order to launch. They had watched the opening exchange on their displays, seen the alien ships reel from the surprise attack. Now it was their turn. "All wings, this is command." Day's voice came through her helmet speakers. "You are cleared to engage. Show them how humans fly." Mina grinned and pushed her throttle forward. Her fighter shot out of the hidden launch bay carved into an asteroid that Earth had captured and positioned months ago. Around her, the rest of the squadron followed. A swarm of small, fast ships that scattered in every direction. The Corthan fighters moved to intercept, but they flew in neat formations, following tactics that had been perfected over thousands of years of galactic warfare. They expected the humans to do the same, to meet them in organized combat. Instead, Mina dove straight toward the nearest Corthan cruiser, her fighter screaming through space at maximum acceleration. Her wingman, a pilot named Quan, followed close behind. The Corthan fighters tried to track them, but the human ships were smaller and more agile than anything they had encountered before. "They are not following standard attack patterns," one of the Corthan fighter pilots reported. "They are flying directly at our capital ships." This is suicide, but it was not suicide. It was a tactic as old as human warfare itself. Get in close where the big guns cannot track you. Move fast, hit hard. Get out. Mina fired her missiles when she was less than 100 meters from the cruiser's hull, so close that the Corthan point defense systems could not rotate fast enough to shoot them down. The missiles struck the ship's communication array, destroying it in a shower of sparks. Then she pulled up hard, her fighter's engines straining as she looped around and headed back toward Earth. Behind her, Quan targeted the cruiser's sensor array with his railgun. The solid metal slugs tore through the delicate equipment. The cruiser was not destroyed, but it was blind and deaf, unable to coordinate with the rest of the fleet. All across the battlefield, human fighters were doing the same thing. They did not try to destroy the big ships. Instead, they took out communication systems, sensors, weapon tracking arrays. They turned the organized Corthan fleet into a confused group of ships that could not talk to each other. Belrax watched in growing horror as his fleet fell into chaos. "Get those fighters off my ships!" "Where are our interceptors?" "They are trying, Commander," Ron said. "But the human fighters are too fast. Too unpredictable. They do not fight like any species we have encountered." On Earth's surface, Colonel Bora stood in a command post outside Seoul, watching the sky. She could see flashes of light as ships exploded in orbit. The battle was going better than expected, but she knew the aliens would not give up. Soon they would try to land troops on the ground. That was where the real fight would begin. "Ma'am, we have incoming," one of her officers reported. 12 Corthan troop carriers heading for our position. "They will be here in 10 minutes, Bora nodded. "Good, let them come. Everyone to positions. Remember your training. These aliens have never fought on a planet like Earth. Show them why that is a mistake." The Corthan troop carriers landed in a field 5 kilometers from Seoul. The rear doors opened and soldiers poured out. They were tall and thin like all Corthans, wearing armor that could stop most conventional weapons. Each soldier carried a plasma rifle that could burn through concrete. They had shields that could deflect bullets. By all logic, they should have been unstoppable. The Corthan commander, a veteran named Threshy, led his troops toward the city. Intelligence reported that the humans would try to defend their population centers. He expected to face soldiers with primitive firearms, maybe some light vehicles. Nothing his troops could not handle. The first artillery shell landed in the middle of his formation without warning. One moment his troops were advancing in perfect order. The next moment 15 soldiers were gone, vaporized by the explosion. Threshy looked around in confusion. Where had that come from? The answer came in the form of 50 more shells falling from the sky. Bora had positioned her artillery batteries behind hills where the Corthans could not see them. She had spotters hidden everywhere, feeding targeting data. The Corthans had shields that could stop bullets and energy weapons, but they did not do much against high-explosive shells falling from above. Threshy ordered his troops to scatter and advance faster. They needed to close the distance, get into the city where the artillery could not hit them without striking human buildings. But as they ran forward, machine gun fire erupted from positions they had not seen. The humans had dug trenches and bunkers, camouflaged so well that they were invisible until they opened fire. The plasma rifles the Corthans carried were powerful, but they overheated quickly and needed time to recharge. Human machine guns did not have that problem. They fired solid bullets continuously, thousands of rounds per minute. The Corthan shields flickered and failed under the sustained fire. "This is wrong," Threshy said into his communicator. "The intelligence was wrong. These humans know how to fight. They are coordinated." The docking bay doors sealed behind the transport ship as it settled onto the landing pad. Corthan guards approached, expecting to help wounded soldiers. Instead, the rear door exploded outward and human troops poured out like a flood. Taeyang was first out, his rifle up and ready. Behind him, 50 soldiers moved with practiced precision, each one knowing exactly what to do. The Corthan guards froze for a precious second, their minds unable to process what they were seeing. Humans here? That second of confusion cost them everything. Taeyang fired his weapon, not at the guards but at their communication equipment mounted on the wall. The device exploded in sparks. Now the guards could not call for help. "Secure the bay," Taeyang shouted. His team spread out, taking cover behind cargo containers and equipment. The Corthan guards finally reacted, raising their plasma rifles and activating their shields. Energy bolts flashed through the air, burning holes in metal walls. But the humans did not stand still. They moved constantly, using cover, supporting each other with coordinated fire. Salman led her team through a side door, heading deeper into the facility. The corridors were narrow and built for tall Korthans, which made them perfect for close combat. She held her shotgun ready, modified with armor-piercing rounds that the engineers promised would work against energy shields. The first Korthan guard they encountered learned that the engineers were right. The shield flickered and died under the impact of solid metal slugs fired at close range. In the command center, the Korthan commander was named Vren. He was an older soldier who had spent 20 years running mining operations on conquered worlds. He sat at his console watching surveillance feeds, drinking a warm beverage and thinking about his retirement next year. Then alarms started blaring throughout the facility. "What is happening?" Vren demanded. His communications officer tried to raise the docking bay and got only static. Surveillance feeds showed humans fighting their way through the corridors. Humans. On his station. It was impossible. And yet it was happening right in front of his eyes. "Send all available guards to repel the invaders," Vren ordered. "Seal the worker barracks. We cannot let them reach the prisoners." But his orders came too late. Salmon's team had already reached the worker barracks, a massive warehouse where 10,000 Threshy were housed in conditions that made Salmon's blood boil. The ceiling was too low. The air was too hot. Beings were packed together with barely enough room to move. Many looked sick. All looked hopeless. "Everyone stay calm," Salmon shouted. A few of the Threshy had translators that converted her words. "We are humans from Earth. We are here to free you. But we need your help. Are there any fighters among you? Anyone willing to fight for their freedom?" At first there was only silence. The Threshy stared at these strange aliens with fear and confusion. They had been slaves for 20 years. Hope was something they had learned to forget because hope only brought pain when it was taken away. Then an old Threshy male pushed his way to the front. He was small even for his species, with gray fur and a bent back from years of hard labor. But his eyes still held fire. "I am Elder Nam. I remember when the Korthans first came to our world. I remember fighting back. I remember watching my people surrender when the cost became too high. If you truly offer us freedom, then yes, we will fight." Salmon opened the crates her team had carried. Inside were human weapons, simple but effective. Rifles, pistols, even some body armor. "Then arm yourselves, Elder Nam. Show the Korthans that Threshy are slaves no longer." In the command center, Vren watched in growing horror as his carefully controlled facility descended into chaos. Humans were bad enough, but now the prisoners were rebelling. Workers were breaking out of the barracks, overwhelming guards through sheer numbers. Some had weapons. Some just used tools and improvised clubs, but they all had something the Korthan guards did not have. Rage that had been building for 20 years. "We need reinforcements," Vren said to his communications officer. "Contact the fleet. Tell them we have a full-scale rebellion." "Sir, the humans destroyed our long-range communications when they attacked the docking bay. We can only reach the patrol ship in orbit," Vren cursed. "Then call them down here now." The patrol ship responded immediately, descending toward the mining colony. But as it approached, something unexpected happened. 3 more ships appeared from behind the planet's largest moon. They were not Korthan ships. They were human vessels that had been hiding, waiting for this exact moment. Mina was piloting the lead fighter, and she grinned as her targeting system locked onto the patrol ship. "Hello again," she said into her communication system. "Remember us from Earth? We brought some friends." Her missile launched, streaking toward the surprise Korthan ship. Behind her, 20 more fighters opened fire. The patrol ship tried to raise its shields and return fire, but it was outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Within minutes, it was a burning wreck falling toward the planet's surface. Back in the facility, Taeyang's team reached the command center. The door was sealed and reinforced, designed to withstand attacks. But the humans had brought shaped charges, explosives designed specifically to breach doors. The blast echoed through the corridors, and the door fell inward. Vren stood with his remaining guards, their weapons raised. For a moment, the two forces faced each other across the destroyed doorway. Then Taeyang spoke, his voice calm and steady. "Commander Vren, your patrol ship is destroyed. Your facility is lost. Your guards are either dead or surrendering. You can fight and die here, or you can surrender and be treated as a prisoner of war under human military law. Choose now." Vren looked at the humans, then at his guards. He saw the fear in their eyes. These young Korthans had never faced an enemy that fought with such intensity, such determination. They had been trained to suppress weak client species, not battle-hardened warriors. Slowly, Vren lowered his weapon. His guards followed his example. I surrender. But know this, humans. You have started something you cannot finish. The Council will send armies to crush you. They will make examples of every species that follows your path. Let them try, Taiyang said. We have a saying on Earth, give me liberty or give me death. Your council is about to learn what happens when an entire galaxy decides it would rather die free than live as slaves. News of the Thresh-9 liberation spread through council space like wildfire. On 100 worlds, client species watched the recordings that humans deliberately broadcast. They saw Threshy workers taking up weapons against their oppressors. They saw humans fighting not for conquest or resources, but simply to free strangers they had never met. They saw the mighty Korthan military defeated by courage and determination. In the council chamber, chaos reigned. 3 member species had already announced they were withdrawing from the council. Dozens of client species were experiencing riots and rebellions. The careful order that had existed for millions of years was crumbling. Chancellor Vorn addressed the remaining delegates, his tentacles crackling with barely contained fury. This human infection must be eliminated. Not just defeated, eliminated. I propose we assemble the Grand Fleet, every ship from every member species. We will destroy Earth completely, turn it into an asteroid field. Make an example so permanent that no species will ever dare to challenge us again. But not all delegates agreed. The Keeper, silent for so long, finally spoke. Its voice was ancient and filled with sadness. You do not understand what you face. I have watched civilizations rise and fall for eons. I have seen empires that seemed eternal crumble to dust. And I tell you now, humanity is not the disease. We are. We have grown fat on the labor of others. We have forgotten that freedom is the natural state of intelligent beings. The humans have reminded the galaxy of this truth, and no amount of violence will make species forget it again. Then you side with the rebels? Vorn demanded. I side with reality, the Keeper replied. You can destroy Earth, you can kill every human, but the idea they have planted will not die. It will spread through every client species, every oppressed world, every being that dreams of something better. You can be remembered as tyrants who ruled through fear, or you can adapt and survive. But the galaxy you knew is already gone. Several delegates began arguing loudly. Some demanded immediate military action. Others suggested negotiations. A few, seeing which way the wind was blowing, quietly began making plans to distance themselves from the Council's actions. On Earth, Ambassador Hyun received reports of the successful Thresh-9 mission. Colonel Bora stood next to him in the command center, watching as the numbers came in. 10,000 Threshy freed, over 400 Korthan soldiers captured, 3 council ships destroyed, and most importantly, 0 human casualties. It is working, Bora said. Species are rebelling across council space. The Korthan Empire is scrambling to control riots on a dozen worlds. The council is fracturing. But they will strike back, Hyun warned. Vorn will not let this go unpunished. He will gather every ship he can and come for us with everything he has. Commander Day entered the room carrying a data pad. Let him come. We have been preparing for this. Dr. Yuna and her team have made breakthroughs with the captured council technology. We can now produce our own shields, though they are not as strong as theirs.